Hello world and welcome back to another episode of Applied Energistics 2, where today we're going to be covering a lot more things such as channels, cables, and how to get things in and out of your ME system. However, starting off, what we're going to go over first is just some two basic things. We've got an energy cell here and a dense energy cell here. These are basically ways of storing energy inside of Applied Energistics 2. Obviously, we can use the vibration chamber or some sort of crank in order to generate power for our system, but most likely when you're going into this big of a scale, what we're going to show off today, you are most likely going to have a separate mod generating your power. However, obviously you can use power from within your own mod. So here we've got the energy cell. This is made using with Fluix dust, Quartz glass, and 4 charged Certus quartz, and this can hold 200,000 AE or RF or whatever you want to call it. And then you have the bigger version, which is the dense energy cell, which just takes 8 energy cells and a calculation processor. This will store 1.6 million AE. Now, before we go fully into channels and how they work, we first need to go over all the different types of cables that we have. Now, we've already covered the quartz fiber cable, which is made like this, but we haven't gone over how it's actually used. The quartz fiber cable is a way of actually sending power to other parts of your system or separate systems, but it doesn't actually use up any data or channels. So over here, we have got ourselves set up. We've got two sort of different connected systems here. One, we've got our controller here, and then over on this side, we have got another disk drive here. Now, we have this separated by our one quartz fiber cable here. So this is sending power to the disk drive, which is allowing our disk drive to be powered. However, when we look inside of here, we can see we've got these blocks. And then if we go over to the other one, this is showing different types of blocks. That's because these are reading their own separate drives, as no data is being sent between these two cables, only power. Now, the next cable is the glass cable. This is probably your main source of cable you're really going to use, especially in the early game, and that's obviously made with the quartz fiber and 2 Fluix crystals. Now, each of these cables here, they can push through or use up 8 channels. Now, what do I mean by channels? A channel is essentially a line or a power feed to a direct implement inside of Applied Energistics 2. So, as we can see here, we have got actually 9 different things hooked up here. Now, they're all hooked up by this cable. Now, channels can be sent through items directly themselves if they're adjacent to each other, or through cables individually. Now, if I broke this one here, this glass cable here is now using 4 channels, as we have 4 drives here. They are connected via being adjacent, and then this one line is going in here. Now, we know that the glass cable can go up to 8 channels, so when I connect this here, it now goes up to 8 channels as we're using 8 different drives. Now, the weird thing about this glass fiber cable there, it takes those 8 channels by whatever is closest. So if I actually disconnected this cable here and placed it down here, this drive now engages and this top one is disconnected. That's because this drive down here is actually technically closer to the controller than the one up top. So pay that attention in mind if some things are turning on and some things are turning off when you are adding / removing implements from your ME system. Now, the other thing you can do with your cables here is you can actually dye them. If you surround 8 cables around one die, you will dye all 8 of them. And if you wanted to, you could actually add these glass cables to a piece of wool to make them covered, and then you can dye these covered ones as well. There is no difference between the covered and the regular glass cables. It's just depending on which one that you would actually prefer to look design wise, whether you want them colored or not, but there is no functional difference. Now, the cool thing about coloring things is that no colored ones will actually ever connect to each other. So here we've got our ordinary glass. The glass will cover to the ordinary covered, the covered or uncolored ones you can do, and then we've got our dyed ones. So this is a way of having things all put together without actually needing a load of anchors, which anchors will show off very, very shortly. Now, something else you can do is just using a bucket of water and one of these dyed cables, you can sort of clean it, but it is one bucket at a time for each craft, so keep that in mind. A very useful upgrade is the smart cable. This is made using one of these covered cables, then with a piece of redstone and glowstone dust will give us our smart cables. Now, the smart cables are very useful because they are actually going to show us how many channels are being used. So if I go over here and now I place down some things over here, we can see that lines are starting to appear up on our system. So first it will go into a grey tone and then there'll be a lighter tone. So at the moment we're using 3 channels here, If I put that on, we're now using 4 channels, and if I put one more, you can see we've got that brighter color there. So that is our 5th channel now. So if I keep going, we can go all the way up to 8, and there we go. All 8 channels are being used. Now, you've got to go always back to its source. You don't want to be confused by the end and think, oh, only 2 channels are being used here, because it splits to where the channels are specifically going. So you always want to go to the start of the line to see how many are being used first. Then over here, we are using 3 channels because obviously we've got 3 drives. Then here we've got another 3 drives, as we can see here. And then we've got our final 2 giving us 6. Now, what can happen as well is I can actually separate this here, and all 8 of these are now going to this one block. And now all 8 of these are actually going to still be powered. So you don't have to spread them out, but that's where we're using our adjacent channel usage here. We're still using 8 channels, but only 1 line. So how do we get more channels out of our system? This is where we're going to be using dense cable. First, you have to make covered dense cable. Now, covered dense cable, you just take 4 covered cables and put them together to give us our 1 dense. Now, you only get 1 per every 4, so it does take a lot of resources, this does. Now, this does the exact same as our regular glass or covered, except this is going to get us the full result of 32 cables, or 32 channels, sorry. So here we've got our dense cable. This is going all the way through here, and we actually have 33 different drives in here. As you can see, they're all powered except from 1. This is the furthest point away from our ME system, and that's why it's completely turned off. Now, the thing is that you do not have to connect everything up like this. I could actually start breaking these away, but remember, because of adjacent channels, you can only do so much. So the more I break here, eventually, these later ones are going to turn off. As you can see here, 3 turned off. Now that is because, even though we are pulling the full 32 out of here, by the time we get to here, we can only use 8 channels up. So that's why we've got our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those are 8 channels through adjacent blocks. So that's why we need another cable here to reach the very end. Even though we're pulling the full 32, we're not actually using them all because 3 have broken. So we are using now 29 channels here instead. Now, just like ordinary cables, you can dye the dense cables as well, and they will not connect. And just like before, you can wash them as well to uncolor them. As well as that, you have got your exact same things with your smart cables here. So we can get dense smart cable. Now I'm going to demonstrate it on this line over here how it works, because it's a little bit different. So if we place this one down, we have got this connected here. We are now using 8 channels, but as you can see, it's using only 2 lines. You've got to imagine everything that is being actually divided by 4. So here we are now actually using 16 channels, not just 8. So you've got to keep that in mind. It works the exact same way as the regular smart cables, but it's going to be using up more and more channels. Now you can see we're using 8 channels here, then only 3 here and 3 here. So if I keep going all the way along, it's going to fill up more and more, and there we go. We're now using the full 32 channels there. Now, I've been talking a lot about channels, but what are channels actually used on? Essentially, any individual item inside of Applied Energistics 2 is going to be using a channel. So off this drive here, off the very top here, we're actually using 2 channels. One is the drive itself, the other is the terminal. The terminal itself is going to be using a channel. So anything and anything later on that we're going to be showing, anything that requires power or data, that is going to be using up a channel. Now, the last thing I need to say about these dense cables is that these dense cables, they don't work on things such as terminals like we have over here. If I took this now and broke this and placed this down, and then we tried to slap this on here, as you can see, it doesn't actually work. You would have to step down to a glass cable in order for this to actually be accessible, which is a little bit annoying. As well as that, you cannot place a dense cable on anything that uses an importer, exporter, or storage bus, which we're going to cover very shortly. Now, before we actually go into the inputs and outputs and all the different things you can do with the ME system, there's 2 more or 3 more things I technically want to show. First thing we're going to need is a quartz cutting knife, which is just made with some ordinary Certus quartz sticks and iron, and this is pretty much only used for one craft, and that is to make these cable anchors, which is just obviously the cutting tool and a piece of iron. Now, these cable anchors sort of work just like the quartz fiber, except it doesn't do anything. It's a way of blocking cable connections, as you can see here. So here we've got 2 separate systems that are right next to each other. But if I wanted to connect a cable down here, we can see, it's not going to work. The reason it's not going to work is because you can't have 2 controllers on a system at once. But this is where we can use these anchors. So the anchor has to be placed down first, which is a bit annoying. So if I place down this here, I can't now put an anchor on the side, which is annoying. So you have to place an anchor down first, and then we place our cable. So that has now stopped that connection there, but it's not stopping everything from breaking. So it stops things from connecting cable-wise and with different implements or parts inside of your ME system. Now, the last 2 things are a way of controlling our cables with redstone power. First is the ME toggle bus. This is made using 2 pieces of redstone, a lever, and 2 pieces of glass cable. And now this is going to allow you to send power/data when you power it with redstone signal, and then if you simply put your ME bus inside of any workbench or your inventory, it'll get you an inverted bus. The inverted bus is literally the exact opposite. When you engage power on it, it was going to turn it off. So here we've got ourselves a couple of drives with these buses in between. We've got 2 buses and an inverted bus. What we do is if we switch this on here, obviously it sends power to the next one. We now have a connection. If we do it again, obviously it goes to the next one, and over here we've already got power. If we flick this one on, it's going to turn it off as it's inverted. So that took a while, but you have to understand channels before we go into the serious business of getting things in and out of your system. Now the first thing we're going to be covering is the import bus. This is going to be a way of putting items into your ME system. This is made using an Annihilation core, a sticky piston, and 2 pieces of ingots, and you only get 1 item import bus per craft. Now all this simply does is, as I say, it puts items into your system. So inside of here we have got absolutely nothing at the moment, but inside of here what we can do is just say a stack of granite here, and this is going to slowly start sucking it out into our system. Now you don't have any graphics for anything going through here, but inside of our ME system it is slowly putting it all inside. Now this is very slow, as you can see here, but there are ways of speeding up. If we right click on our input bus here, we're going to see a different sort of UI here. Now 1 is only available at the moment in this 3x3 square. Only 1 spot is actually available to us. This is essentially our filter, our whitelist. So if I put stone into here now, this is going to actually stop pumping the granite out, because we've said, oh no, we only want to have a whitelist of stone in here. Obviously when nothing is in here, we can take absolutely everything out. So it doesn't matter what item is in this chest, we can take it out of here. So this is our whitelist. Now there are other upgrades in here, as you can see on the side, but I'm going to cover them in just a moment. Now the counterpart to the import bus is the export bus, made very similarly, but this time with a regular piston and a formation core, and it's slightly built upside down, and this is a way of taking things out of your ME system. So here we've got an export bus on our chest. Currently it's got nothing in it. Now if we do the same thing and get ourselves some granites, when we go in here, nothing initially happens. It's not like the import bus. We have to set a filter in here first. So we've got the exact same GUI here, except for the export bus. This is where you have to set a filter, otherwise everything out of your ME system would just come out, which is why it doesn't work. So this is where we've got to place our filter in here, and then slowly granite is going to start coming out of our system. Again, we have got different upgrades, but again, we're going to be covering those shortly, which is the next thing on the list actually. There are sort of 2 tiers of upgrades. As you can see, these ones are the diamond ones and these ones are the gold ones. One's a basic, one's the advanced filters, I would call them. The first one here is the basic card. These are going to be used for a couple of different upgrades. That requires 3 iron ingots, 2 gold ingots, a redstone dust, and a calculation processor. And you get 2 of these per craft. The first thing we're going to cover is the redstone card. It reuses a basic card and a redstone torch, and this will only get 1 per craft, and this simply allows each of your implements to be controlled with a redstone signal. So if we go over here to our export bus here, place it inside our upgrade here, we now have this little button up here. So this allows us to either be always active, as it is right now, active without a signal, or active with a signal. It's very, very simple. Or you have this one actually, activate once per pulse. So if you want to have things on a sort of timer. Now this goes inside as well as our import bus over here, so it can be used in both. Next up, we have got the capacity card. This is with a Certus Quartz and a basic card, and this is going to actually increase the whitelisting or filtered space inside of your implements. So if we go into our export bus here, we can put 1 inside of here, and now we've got 4 extra squares, and we have to put a second one in here to unlock the full 9 squares here. Now what you have here is also scheduling mode, so you can export the first item until this network is empty and then try the next one, or you could sort of go in a round robin, so it would go 1, then the next, then the next, and the next, depending on how you want it. Then you've also got export items at random, so it'll just go whenever you want. And then we're back to scheduling, so it'll try the first one till it can't anymore, then the next one till it can't anymore. Now the exact same thing can be done in the import bus, but this time you don't have any sort of round robin, because it's not going to take out items inside of here in any given order. You just get more capacity space here for whitelisting. Now there are more upgrades that are done in this tier, but for these specific implements we're showing today, we're not going to be going through every single upgrade. But the next thing we need is the advanced card. This is made using the exact same as the basic card, except 2 diamonds instead of gold. The first thing we're going to show is the fuzzy card. This uses a piece of white wool and the advanced card, and this allows fuzzy behavior on items. Now this is going to be pretty much used just on durability, but if we put this into our exporter here, we now have this new bar. So match any, that means if anything matches inside of here, so we put a pickaxe in here, here. It doesn't matter if it's a brand new pickaxe or it's a half broken pickaxe or whatever. If you put it in here, if a pickaxe is in the system of the same variety, then it will start pulling it out the system. Then you can have split damage. So we've got two different types. If we've got up to 75%, 50%, 25%, and then just ordinary damage. Now I'm going to bring up this little table that we have from the AE website right here about how the fuzzy tool works, but it's very, very simple. Essentially, if it's at 70, or let's start from the beginning. If it's at split damage, this just means that if it's anything under 100% and not fully right, it's going to split between the two. If it's at 75%, that means anything over 75% is going to be good or classed as a fully repaired pickaxe, and anything under 75% is going to be classed as broken. With 50% is anything under 50% is broken, anything over 50% is fully repaired, and then 25%, anything under 25% is nearly broken, and anything over 25% is classed as fully repaired, and that's the way everything's split. Our next card is the inverter card. This is again made with the advanced card, but this time with a redstone torch. Now, you may think this is very similar as our redstone toggle one, isn't it? But no, it isn't. It actually changes your filter from being a whitelist to a blacklist. Now, the exporter itself, that can't actually accept this card, as you can see here, but it can be for our importer over here. So that means if you had a full chest of whatever variety in here, you can now select up to 9 different items that you wish to not be taken out of this chest at any time. Now the last one here is the acceleration card, again with the advanced card, but this time a Fluix crystal, and all this does is going to increase the speed of items transferred through an implement. So if we have our exporter here, now inside we know we've got absolutely terrible amounts of granite inside of here. If I took this and put this granite in here, we can see that it's going at a relatively decent rate. But if we want it to be as fast as it possibly can be, then we can put 4 cards in here and then it starts doing it very quickly. As you can see, everything is pretty much coming out in massive chunks now. It's a heck of a lot faster with 4. So now we've covered the basic way of getting things in and out of our system, but sometimes we're going to have way too many items that we're not even going to want to put everything into our drives because we have limited amount of space or limited amount of drives in our system. This is where our next item, the ME storage bus, comes into play. Now, in order to craft this, you're going to need an ME interface, a sticky piston and a piston, and an interface is made using a formation core, annihilation core, 4 iron ingots, and 2 pieces of glass, and you only get 1 of these per craft. Now, the interface is a very important block, but we're not going to be covering that today. We're going to be covering just the storage bus as it's a component. Now, the storage bus, or the ME storage bus, is a way of actually accessing data or inventory spaces outside of your ME system. So here we have got ourselves a storage bus on a chest, and it's absolutely chock full of birch logs. Now, inside of our system, we can see that we have got plenty of items in here, and here we go. We can see this 1,728 birch logs, even though there are actually none in this drive. If I got ourselves here a quartz wrench here, we could actually take off this implement here, shift right click to pull that off, and then inside of here we can see the birch is completely missing now. That is because everything's in this chest. Now we can access this, we can take a full stack out of here, and we go into the system, a full stack has been taken. So it's a very, very cool way. If say you start off a game and you're only using chests, you could use an external storage on absolutely everything first if you so wanted to. But now this is where something comes very important and into play. Priorities. So if you go into your terminal, we have got our priority system over here somewhere. No, sorry, it's the drives. If we go into our ME drives, we have priorities. Now, we covered a bit about priorities in the first episode. Now, we know that with insertion, higher priorities go first, and extraction, lower priorities go first. Now, what is it with a storage bus? It's the same as insertion. So the higher the priority, it's going to choose there first. So say we had a load of birch logs out of this system, so we know we've got 3 spaces. We currently, in our storage bus here, have a priority of 0. But let's just take this as -10 to make it easy, and then our disk drive is going to be +10. So 10. If we put these birch logs into here, we will still get the exact same count, as you can see, but they're not going to go into this chest first. They're going to go into our drives. If our drives became fully 100% stacked up to the brim, they would then go to our external storage. This is where you want things to be very, very careful with your priorities, because if you want to keep this to be a primarily only birch logs, but you want to access it all the time, it's probably best to have either a priority-based system like this, but to be honest, even if we had this at a higher priority, and then we had our terminals at a lower priority, if we took any other type of block like this stack of deep slate, it's now deep slate's going to go into here. So you are probably, if you wanted this to be only birch logs, you would want to put an importer of birch logs straight into here, but keep the priority on the disk drive. But now, as you can see, there was a big old GUI for the storage bus. Now again, these can have upgrades. You can have either capacity cards. This is going to increase your size down here. And then you also have your fuzzy cards and the inverter card to make this all blacklist if you wanted to. We've got some buttons on the side here so we can clear all of our configs in case you already have absolutely loads of these different filters in here already. You can just clear the config just like so. We have in here partial storage. So if you click this button here, all it's going to say is have a look at everything that you have inside of this box already, and then you click this button, it will start saying you what's inside. So if you put other things inside of here and then click that as well, are they the same thing? No, they're not. You can just click that button again and then it gives you more filters. Instead of you having to go in here individually, you can set up your whole chest first. Next we have report inaccessible items. So next we have report inaccessible items. At the moment it's set to no, only extractable items will be visible. Now what does this mean? Inside of here nothing looks particularly different. We've still got all this amount of birch logs. We can still see our one rooted dirt and our deep slate, as you can see here. This is to be worked in conjunction with this here, input/output mode bidirectional. So currently we can put items in and out of here. If I change this to extract only, it means I can only take things out of here, which makes perfect sense. If I take this out of here, this is going to take one out, and then if I put it back in, I can't actually put it back in. It's now going to go into our drive here. So if I took this out again, hopefully it hasn't taken a second, which it hasn't, but I can put it in manually. Now with this, it says here, if I have this on insert only, that means I can only put in things inside of here, so I can't take them out. And look, the birch logs are completely gone. If I wanted to see how much was still in here but I couldn't take it out, I could select this as yes, and it says items that cannot be extracted will now be visible. So I can now still see them inside this chest, but I can't actually take them out no matter how much I click on them. So that's how they work. The report inaccessible items and your input mode sort of work in conjunction together. So if there is bidirectional, you don't really have to worry about this, whether it's yes or no. The last thing here is filtered operations. So this is filter on insert and extract, and then also filtered on insert only. So that's again sort of used with this over here, insert only. So it will only filter it if it's on the insert. If it's bidirectional, then it doesn't really matter because it'll be like this, and then there's no extract option. Now the very, very cool thing we can do with the storage bus as well is that we can use this with drawers. Now this is, we have got functional storage here. You can also do it with storage drawers, but functional drawers I quite like for 1.18. Now what we have here, we've got a selection of different chests or drawers full of many, many different items, and they're all linked together with this one storage controller. So at the moment, I obviously can't see any of these items, but what if I put a storage drawer on here or a storage bus on here? If I then went into my ME system, I can now see all of these different blocks in here. We've got 960 dandelions, some powder, grindstones, cobblestone walls, iron blocks, and it's all because it's linked directly to the storage drawer controller. I could actually have this only on this one here, but then I would only be able to see the stone inside, as you can see here. But since we have this all connected via one of these big storage controllers here, we can see everything inside this system. Now this is how it's working with functional storage. The exact same applies when it's sophisticated storage drawers. Now the last way of getting things in and out of your system, a little bit unorthodox. The first one is the Annihilation plane. This is me using 3 Fluix crystals, 2 pieces of iron and an Annihilation core, and this also can be done in the horizontal craft if that makes sense, and you get one of these per craft. Also, it can be enchanted. Now the thing that the Annihilation core does, it will destroy or pick up any items that are directly in front of it. So if here inside of my inventory we've got absolutely nothing, what I can do here is when I place down some blocks, they are instantly being broken and sucked into our system. As well as that, as we throw items straight into it, they will be sucked into our system. Now that doesn't work when they're directly in front of it, not like refined storage. They have to be thrown physically into the panel, and then we'll get more into our system, which is a pretty cool way of doing things. Say you're quite early in the game still and you still don't have wireless, what you could do is instead of running all the way over to your terminal, right clicking, putting everything in, you could just go over to one of these panels, say on the wall or floor, and just shift control Q, and then you can just drop the whole thing into your system. It's a little bit quicker in my opinion. The opposite side of this is the formation plane, made the exact same way but with a formation core, and this is a way of actually placing items or throwing items into the world. So here we've got 4 down. Inside of here we have a whitelist if we right click on it, and then when you put a whitelist in here, as you can see, a little item block in the corner pops up, and this just basically tells us, do we want to have the block placed or do we want to have it dropped into the world? Now this also has a priority given here, so we have these set at different priorities. From the top here we've got it as 1000, we've got this as 500, then we've got it as 100, and then we've got it as 10 at the bottom, as you can see here, and it's currently all at placing as blocks. I'm going to break these for now because they're a part of a different demonstration. Now, what if I place a load of dirt into here? What happens is they all get placed. That's pretty cool. It's pretty instant. It did, although it was very quick, it did place from the top down. Now, even though we've got loads of dirt in the system here, it's not going to start replacing them. They only get placed as things enter the system. So if I take all of these out here and then go onto a chest which has an importer on here, if I now place these dirt in the chest, as you can see, it's going to place them slowly, one at a time, as this importer takes them into the system. Now that all 4 are placed, it's going to start filling up our system in here. Now, the other thing, as I say, is that when I have these broken, or sorry, let's take all of this out first, otherwise it's going to keep going, I can now have this be placed as a drop item instead. Now, even if I place these all down to drop item, what's going to happen is that it's only going to keep throwing it out of the very top here first, as you can see here. Now, if I had the acceleration cards on this importer, which I can do, what's going to happen is that we're actually going to start throwing out more than one block at a time because it's quite fast. I think it just threw out the rest of the stack all at once. Just like that. Now, the reason why I had it like this is that you can do something pretty cool. If you so wanted to, let's place this first one as a block. What we can do here is take out the acceleration cards to begin with and then place our dirt in here. As you can see, it's placing it and then immediately breaking it and putting it into our other system that's over here. As you can see, this is slowly increasing. Now, the cool thing is that the longer you leave it, the faster it ends up going. I don't know why it does this, but it ends up being pretty quick overall, despite the fact that this isn't really being pulled out any quicker. Oh no, it is. Yeah, it's very strange. Somehow gives you a quicker acceleration card than just putting acceleration cards in there, or a cheaper one after all. Now, the other thing, as we know that we can throw things inside of here, so if I got ourselves a load of this dirt and then place this in here, a similar thing happens where it starts throwing them one at a time, but eventually it's going to start throwing them pretty quickly for whatever reason, so you get this weird effect and you can start filling up your other ME system. So it's another way of having 2 separate signals actually talk to each other, except of course this only works one way. Now, the formation plane, this also has some upgrades. As you can see, we've got the opacity card to increase this filtration system, the fuzzy card and the inverter card in order to make this all as a blacklist. You can set a priority, of course, as we've shown. Now, the Annihilation plane, that doesn't actually have any GUI when you right click on it. For now, that is going to be everything when it comes to the inputs and outputs of Applied Energistics 2. Next time, we're going to be covering something a little bit more complicated, and that's going to be all about auto crafting. But if this video helps you out in any way, shape or form, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. That would really help me out, and ring the bell button to stay notified when that auto crafting video comes live. Now, if you would like to know a little bit more about how you actually start with your first ME system, how to store things in your system using all these drives which I've shown off today, then click the video on screen now to take you to our very first episode in the series, which is our beginner's guide to Applied Energistics 2. But until next time, guys, take care.